The planetary defense system for the Federation's capital world was designed to ward off an orbital bombardment and consisted of state-of-the-art weaponry. This was the most heavily guarded planet in the galaxy, given its political and symbolic importance. With all of their firepower turned against a single ship, there was no way conventional shields could withstand the blast. I feared the humans had bit off more than they could chew. How would the Terran government retaliate for the destruction of their fleet's crown jewel? It was unclear whether they would stick to the concept of a proportional response. An outright declaration of war could be imminent, especially if the Federation fired the first shots. It seemed common sense from my perspective that provocation of the humans was not in our best interest. Earth was signed on to, and in many cases the founder of treaties that prohibited attacks on civilians. But if pushed to the brink, who knew what they were capable of? Just a single nanite bomb dropped against a metropolitan populace. The casualties would number in the millions. Not that I would be around to worry about the consequences. In a few moments, I would be vaporized, alongside every other occupant of this vessel. Gazing through the flagship's viewport, I saw an azure glow spreading across the lunar surface. That indicated the orbital laser was charging up. It was capable of emitting the same amount of energy as a medium-sized star, at least for a few seconds. A hit that powerful would pass through our shields as though they were non-existent. Any hopes I had of escaping this situation alive evaporated. I thought they would fire the lunar station's plasma railguns or their guided missiles, as was typically the protocol for a space intrusion. The orbital laser was the capital's last line of defense, which seemed rather overkill for a single vessel. Was there any way to convince Commander Rykov to turn back? This is suicide. We must stand down or we're all dead. I hated the note of desperation in my voice, which crept higher in pitch as I spoke. You can talk to the Federation later. Work something out. The commander straightened, the glint of bitterness in his eyes.
The time for talking is over. We've tried talking for hundreds of years, and look how well that worked out for us. The Federation needs to learn a lesson in humility.
Look, I agree that this is an act of war. If I were in your place, I would respond in kind too. But you need more ships, and a solid plan. Our deaths won't achieve anything, I pleaded. He waved a hand dismissively.
I'm not planning on dying today, General. We'll be fine.
It occurred to me that Rykov either did not grasp the gravity of the threat, or that his recent skirmishes had led to overconfidence. Whatever fortifications the flagship had, there was no way they were designed to be subjected to such extreme forces.
Warning. A target lock against this ship has been detected. Estimated time of impact, 5 seconds.
A computerized voice said. I squeezed my eyes shut, waiting for permanent darkness to overtake me. The sound of trilling alarms rang in my ears, and I wondered if it would be the last thing I heard. There was no fear in my mind, just a burning hatred for the fools running the federal government. This loss of life could have been avoided if only the speaker behaved with sensibility.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
My eyes shot open as a jolt passed through the ship, and I nearly lost my balance in its wake. The lights flickered overhead, presumably from power being rerouted to the shields, but that was the only side effect of the blast I noticed. There were no fires breaking out on the bridge, no systems knocked offline.
Shields at 96%. Structural integrity uncompromised. Retaliatory action advised.
The computer intoned. I couldn't understand how the flagship was still in one piece. That orbital laser was designed to overpower an entire formation, yet it hardly scratched the Terran craft. All it had achieved was a tiny dent to their shield capacity. Humanity's meekness and why they had hidden their true nature for so long was more baffling than ever. Their vessels were nigh invincible, and their technology outpaced the Federation's weaponry by centuries. What was it that differentiated humans from other aggressive species? They could rule the galaxy if they so desired, but instead they moralized and mediated. Commander Rykov cleared his throat.
That was your most powerful weapon, General? You people need us more than you realize.
I suppose nothing should surprise me anymore, I grumbled. What now? They're going to fire again once the laser is recharged. The human tilted his head as though weighing his options.
That station is remotely operated. A sensor scan of the moon detected 0 life signatures.
Yes, to my knowledge, I answered.
Good. In that case, we're going to make sure they don't have the chance to fire again.
He clapped his hands together, a predatory grin on his face.
Ensign Carter, ready the antimatter missiles. I want you to bury that station.
Understood, sir.
Came the reply from the weapons post. I felt strangely detached watching a trio of warheads close the distance between us and the station. My oath as a soldier was to protect and defend the Federation against all enemies, and it seemed the Terrans could now be classified as a hostile party. After all, without the planetary defense system, the capital would be left vulnerable to attack. By taking no action during this engagement, I was siding with the humans, wasn't I? The missiles slammed into the lunar surface with a radiant flash, churning up plumes of dust and debris. Where a sophisticated defense complex once stood, only 3 craters remained. The aftermath was reminiscent of an asteroid strike rather than a missile, given the magnitude of its depth. Staring at the fresh gash in the stony ground, I wondered yet again why the Federation was hell-bent on angering the humans. Creatures with such a mastery of destruction should be appeased, not aggravated. Unless your objective was the eradication of your civilization. The low whir of machinery sounded from behind me, and I flinched on instinct. Whipping around, I spotted a robotic cart stocked with firearms wheeling across the bridge, and the Terran personnel gating up as it passed by. Commander Rykov withdrew a scoped plasma rifle, and without a word handed it to me. Its weight was much heavier than I expected, and my shoulders sagged as I accepted it. Either the humans were sporting some sort of power armor, or their physical strength greatly exceeded that of my species.
General, I think we're going to have to fight our way to the embassy once we dock. Between protesters and the Federation security forces, we'll be outnumbered,
the commander said.
You know the layout of the capital better than us. Any suggestions?
I paused, tossing a few ideas around my head. Well, a diversion would help. Do you have chemical weapons on the flagship? I assume the protesters are packed close together outside the embassy, so you could hit them with some sort of gas attack. When the emergency hovercraft respond to the scene, you can use them as a shield from the special forces. I expected the human to appreciate the resourcefulness of my plan, but instead he was looking at me like I'd grown a fourth eye. His mouth opened and closed a few times as though he was struggling to find the words.
We're not doing that,
he replied at last.
Please forget I asked.
Whatever his problem with my suggestion was, it escaped my comprehension. Not only would it minimize human casualties, but it would also provide cover in a dense urban landscape. A wide-open avenue wasn't exactly ideal ground for combat and maneuvering. The flagship began a rapid descent through the planet's atmosphere, hurtling past silvery clouds. The computer's display stated that it had locked onto the landing beacon, and I steeled myself to face whatever lay ahead. As we neared our destination, I finally caught a glimpse of the ground below on screen. I had known that we would likely need to fight our way out of the spaceport before we could head towards the embassy. It came as no surprise then, when I spotted the contingent of soldiers filing into the hangar bay, weapons ready. However, I had not been expecting them to number in the hundreds, and to be solely comprised of Xanax servicemen. This was no ordinary security force, and that could make our mission more difficult than expected. I just hoped Commander Rykov had a plan, because against a unit that size, I didn't have the slightest idea how to escape the spaceport alive.